The sun was shining brightly that spring morning, the flowers were dancing softly in the wind, and I was walking through the countryside, feeling the vibrant energy of nature all around me. It was a scene that always enchanted me, but today there was a special purpose. I was going to visit William, the elderly man who had become a dear friend. Every week, I met him at his home, and the expectation of seeing his face light up filled me with joy. When I reached the door of his house, I took a deep breath, adjusted the storybook under my arm and knocked lightly. The door creaked open, and I felt butterflies in my stomach when I saw William standing there. His blue eyes, marked by time, watching me with a mixture of curiosity and longing. He always kept himself at a distance, as if the outside world was a place he had already said goodbye to. "Good morning, William," he said with a beaming smile. "Good morning, Sarah," he replied. His voice was soft, but there was an echo of sadness. "What did you bring today?" "Today I brought you a story about a prince who dreamed of traveling to distant lands. I think you'll like it." I went to him and hugged him lightly, smelling the smell of old books and fresh coffee that permeated the room. I sat next to him, on the worn-out sofa that occupied the living room. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, creating a welcoming atmosphere. William looked at the book in my hands, hesitating for a moment, as if he was considering whether he should open up to another dream. Traveling. It's something I've always dreamed of, but time passed so quickly," he murmured, nostalgia showing in his voice. "But dreams don't have an expiration date, William. Come on, let yourself be carried away by the story." I encouraged him, opening the book and starting to read aloud. The words flowed like melodies, and I soon realized he was getting lost in the narrative. His expression began to change. The eyes that had previously been dim now shone with a spark of life. "I used to dream of seeing the sea," he said, turning to me, almost as if he were revealing a secret. "I remember when I was young and I talked about this with my wife. We were planning a trip, but, well, life took a different turn. So why not dream again? You can still make that trip, William. The sea is still there waiting for you," I encouraged, imagining the possibility of seeing him rediscover the joy of living. He smiled faintly, but as the story drew to a close, I realized that despite his momentary excitement, the shadow of sadness still hung over him. "You have this special way of making people remember good things, Sarah. I don't know how you do it," he commented, admiring me. "I just believe we all have a little magic inside of us. Sometimes all we need is someone to remind us of that," I replied, feeling a little more connected to him. As we talked, we rambled on about forgotten dreams and adventures that never happened. With each visit, I felt like we were building a bridge between our generations. It was as if, through the stories, I was helping William relive moments he thought he had left behind. However, when I looked out the window, something caught my attention. An unknown man was standing on the road, watching the house. There was something enigmatic about his posture, and curiosity consumed me. But before I could say anything, William interrupted me. "Who could that man be?" he asked, his gaze settling on the figure in the distance. "I don't know, but it looks like he's waiting for something," I replied, trying to ignore the uneasiness that was beginning to form in my chest. The atmosphere seemed to change, and a feeling that something unexpected was coming hung in the air. "I hope it's not something bad," William said, his face closing in again, as if the weight of old memories were coming back to haunt him. And as the sun continued to shine, I knew that today's visit could be marked by changes that neither William nor I were prepared to face. Sunlight streamed in through William's living room window, creating a warm, bright atmosphere. I couldn't contain my excitement as I saw him more excited than ever. It was as if that vibrant energy was finally returning to him, like flowers blooming after a long winter. The topic of our conversation was about the trip he always dreamed of taking, and I proposed that he start planning everything for real. "William, why don't we start drafting your script? We can write down the places you'd like to visit," I suggested, my eyes shining. "You always talked about Paris. Imagine yourself walking through the streets of Montmartre." He looked at me with a shy smile, but there was something else in his eyes, a spark of hope. "Paris. I used to dream of seeing the Eiffel Tower. It's a place that has always been on my list. So let's go. You can write a list of the tourist spots you want to visit. Who knows, we might even plan a real trip. My heart pulsed with excitement. The thought of seeing him rediscover the joy he had lost made me feel alive. Do you really think I could do that? William questioned, his voice filled with doubt. I'm too old to dream like this. William, you are never too old to dream. Life is made of possibilities, and every day is a new chance to start over. You can do this, I insisted, feeling that my every word had the power to light a fire inside him. He looked out the window, as if he was watching the past unfold before his eyes. I remember when I was young. I had so many plans, so many places to visit. But life is full of twists and turns, isn't it? That's true, but you can choose how to react to these twists and turns. What matters is what you do now. And I'm here with you, don't forget that, I replied, trying to convey the confidence I felt. It was then that the front door opened, and a shadow fell across the entrance. A tall, thin man with a sharp gaze appeared. He had a mystical aura, like a traveler carrying the weight of untold stories. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm Jack. I'm looking for William, he said, turning to my friend. The atmosphere in the room instantly changed. William seemed less excited, and his gaze fixed on Jack with an expression of recognition and apprehension. I felt a chill down my spine, a strange feeling starting to take over me. Jack, are you an old friend? William asked. The hesitation in his voice was palpable. Yes, we have some things to discuss, William, Jack replied, moving closer to him, but without looking at me. I watched from a distance, intrigued and worried. What did that man want with William? William looked torn, and I could see that the conversation was beginning to reopen wounds he had tried to forget. Sorry, but now is not a good time. I was just talking to Sarah about plans, he said, his voice lower. Plans? Do you really think it is wise to dream again, William? Jack whispered, and his words seemed to echo in the room. I couldn't hear everything, but the tension was visible, as if a storm was brewing. William's expression changed with every word Jack said, and I felt my heart speed up, caught between curiosity and concern. William, what's going on? I said, determined to get closer. But before I could get any closer, Jack leaned over and whispered something directly into her ear. William's face became pale, and I could see the impact of Jack's words on his face. William, I called, but he seemed lost in a sea of memories. What had that stranger said that shook him so much? I needed to know, but the barrier between us felt stronger than ever. The connection we had built was being threatened by a past I didn't know. Sarah, please don't worry, William murmured, but I wasn't convinced. Whatever Jack had said seemed to have cast a shadow over the light that was beginning to shine again in his life. A mix of fear and curiosity invaded me, as I watched their interaction, not knowing what to do. The atmosphere in the room felt heavy, as if the air was thick with unspoken memories. I was there between William and Jack, feeling the tension building. William, who had previously seemed so excited about dreaming and traveling, was now frozen, as if Jack's words had frozen him. His gaze was distant, as if he were trying to unravel a mystery that had tormented him for decades. William, I called, trying to break the silence that hovered between us. But Jack, with an enigmatic smile on his lips, continued to speak in a low, almost conspiratorial tone. He leaned closer to William, and I could see my friend's expression change, a mixture of curiosity and fear forming on his face. Do you remember what happened that night, William? Jack whispered, his voice clear and penetrating. We need to talk about this. I couldn't stand still anymore. The feeling of being excluded from something so important bothered me deeply. With an impulse, I moved forward, interrupting their conversation. What are you saying? I asked, trying to remain calm. William, you don't need to hear this. Jack paid me no attention, continuing to look into William's eyes, who was now visibly shaken. I could almost feel the walls of the room closing in around us. What Jack was revealing seemed to be reopening wounds that had never healed. William, normally so strong and steadfast, was at the mercy of a past he didn't want to face. "Sarah, please," William murmured, his voice shaky. "Let me hear it. Maybe I need to know." I was paralyzed, the feeling of helplessness invading me. I wanted to protect him, but he seemed so willing to face that moment. Jack's gaze was like a storm, and I felt like a leaf blown by the wind, not knowing where to go. "Okay, but..." I hesitated. "Just know that you are not alone, William. I'm here." Jack finally turned to me, a teasing gleam in his eyes. "Do you think it's helping?" he asked defiantly. "Sometimes you have to face pain in order to move on, Sarah." Those words resonated with me, and I wondered if he was right. Could it be that, by trying to protect William, I was preventing him from finding true freedom? But at the same time, I didn't want him to suffer. "William," I said again, trying to bring his attention back to me. "You don't have to do this if you don't want to. We can continue dreaming together as we have done until now. Don't let the past hold you back." He looked at me, and for a moment, the glimmer of hope I'd always seen in him seemed to waver. But then Jack spoke again, his words cutting like blades. "But what if what you don't know about William's past is what's really stopping him from moving forward?" He insisted, looking directly into William's eyes, who seemed to be lost in a sea of conflicting emotions. "What do you mean?" I asked, anxiety rising inside me. "What do you know that we don't know?" The silence grew thick, and I could feel William's heart racing beside me. He was struggling with his own demons, and the simple act of Jack being there, revealing parts of his story, seemed to be unearthing something he would rather leave buried. Finally, William took a deep breath, as if preparing to dive into deep, unknown waters. "Jack," he began, his voice hesitant, "what do you know about that love?" The question hung in the air, and a biting cold ran through the room. I felt like a spectator in a theater, not knowing if I wanted to continue watching the play unfolding before me. The relationship he had built with William was about to be tested by a past he never wanted to share. And for a moment, I feared that the hope that had arisen between us was about to fade. In the days following the strange Jack's visit, the atmosphere in William's house became thick and heavy. Each week, I approached his door with a mix of anticipation and concern. The light that had once illuminated his face now seemed extinguished, and the joy we shared in our conversations had given way to an unsettling silence. I knew something had changed, but I couldn't understand what had really happened between them. That morning I decided I needed answers. I woke up early, my thoughts racing as I prepared a small snack to go. "Maybe a cup of tea and some biscuits will make him feel better," I thought, trying to convince myself that it would be enough to break the ice. I walked slowly down the flower-filled path that led to her house, each step making me feel more anxious. When I arrived, I noticed that the door was ajar. I knocked but got no response. "William," I called, my voice echoing in the void. I went in and found him sitting in his armchair, looking out the window, lost in thought. "Hi, William," he said, trying to sound light. He turned around slowly, his eyes tired. "Hi, Sarah," he replied, almost in a whisper. The tone of his voice made my heart sink. I walked over, placing the tray next to him. "I brought some cookies. It's been a while since we had fun together." I tried to encourage him to open up. He looked at the cookies but made no move to pick them up. "I'm not hungry," he said, looking away. An awkward silence fell between us. I knew I needed to address the topic that was hanging in the air, but I hesitated. "William, can you tell me what Jack said? It sounds like it affected you a lot," I asked, finally breaking the silence. He sighed heavily, as if the question required immense effort. "He talked about a love I lost. Someone I could never forget," he said, his voice breaking. "He said I had to put this behind me, but I don't know if I can." The pain in his words hit me like a wave. I wanted to comfort him, but I didn't know how. "William, you don't have to carry this alone. I'm here to help you. If you want to talk about it, I'm willing to listen," I offered, sitting closer to him. He gave me a look of gratitude, but then looked back at the window. The sun was setting, and the afternoon shadows were beginning to invade the room. It's complicated, Sarah. I made choices a long time ago, choices that took me away from everything and everyone. And now, after so long, I feel like maybe it's too late to dream again, he confessed, the sadness evident in his face. But what if dreaming is the only thing that can bring you back to life? You taught me that it's never too late to start over, he said, trying to ignite a spark of hope. He shook his head, a look of doubt hovering across his face. It's different for me. You're young, full of dreams. I only carry memories. I felt my heart squeeze. William, your memories are part of who you are, but they don't have to define you. I want you to know that even though the past was difficult, that doesn't mean the future can't be bright, I said, with more conviction than that I really felt. The thought of losing our friendship terrified me. He looked at me, and for a brief moment, I saw a spark of light in his eyes. You really believe that, don't you? He asked, almost in disbelief. Yes, I believe it, and I want you to believe it too. Let's revisit your dreams together, William. Let's find out what can be done, I insisted, taking his hand gently. He looked at our intertwined hands, and for a moment, the silence was broken by hope. Maybe I need more time, Sarah. It's not easy to let go of the past, he said, his voice a little firmer. But I want to try. Smiling, I felt a wave of relief. And that's a start, I replied. But in the midst of our conversation, a thought plagued me. Jack had left deep marks on William's soul, and I needed to understand the impact this had on him. Determined to help my friend, I made a silent promise to myself. I wouldn't give up on him. The friendship we were building was too precious to be lost because of shadows from the past. As the cold wind of the rainy night blew outside, I found myself in the living room, absorbed in Sarah's words. The letter she left on my door was a balm for my soul. William, please don't give up on us. Dreams don't have to be a burden, but a guiding light, she had written. My eyes filled with tears as I read it again, feeling the weight of her sincerity and the hope she still placed in me. Ah, Sarah, I murmured to myself, imagining her smile lighting up the darkness that surrounded me. The fear that paralyzed me was like a shadow, a constant reminder of what I had lost. The love I left behind, the dreams that never came true, all of this trapped me in a past that I didn't know if it was better to forget or remember. Determined to free myself from that cycle of pain, I put on a coat and left the house. The rain was falling heavily, but I didn't care. The cold drops hit my face, as if washing away the memories that tormented me. I walked through the wet streets, each step an attempt to find clarity amidst the whirlwind of feelings. I remembered the young girl who one day dreamed of traveling the world, visiting places that only existed in my imagination. The desire for adventure and the love that I could have experienced still echoed within me. But what did I do? I left all that behind. Why? A lost love. A choice made so long ago that it still hurt. As he walked, memories of Sarah came to him like flashes of light. Your laugh, your curious look, and, most importantly, your determination to help me dream again. I had driven her away, locked her in a prison I had built myself. And now, as I felt the loneliness of the night, I realized that this prison was not only mine, but also hers. When I finally returned home, the rain was starting to ease. The air was fresh, and the smell of wet earth brought a sense of renewal. When I opened the door, I found Sarah waiting for me, her worried expression illuminating the darkness of my loneliness. William, I was so worried, she said, running towards me. I didn't know if you were okay. Sorry, Sarah. I needed some time to think, I replied, trying to hide the vulnerability that haunted me. But the truth is, her presence was all I needed to feel alive again. You don't have to face all of this alone, she insisted, her voice as soft as the rain that was still falling outside. I'm here. I always will be. I felt that deep connection between us again, something I didn't want to lose. I heard what you said in the letter. I'm scared, Sarah. Scared of reliving the past. of opening up old wounds. She took a step forward, her gaze fixed on mine. But the past doesn't have to define your future, William. Dreams can come back, and you don't have to carry them alone. Together, we can find them again. Those words touched my heart. I wanted to believe it was possible. What if I fail? What if I get hurt again? Then we will rise together, Sarah replied with determination. That's what life is all about, getting up after every fall. And I don't want you to give up on living, on dreaming. You deserve that, William. Those words were like a ray of sunshine piercing the dark clouds that surrounded me. I looked at her and saw the hope in her eyes. Her love was not a burden. It was a liberation. You're right, I confessed, feeling a wave of courage wash over me. I don't want to live in the past anymore. I want to dream again. I want to explore with you. Sarah smiled, and in that instant, I realized that the friendship we had built was a bridge between what I was and what I could be. Together we could weather any storm, and I was finally ready to take the first step. The atmosphere on the balcony was tense, as if the air was charged with electricity. I was there in front of Jack, the stranger who had disturbed William's peace and consequently mine. He leaned on one of the wooden pillars, with a look that mixed curiosity and concern. The sunlight was beginning to set, casting long, cold shadows that seemed to creep towards us. You need to understand, Sarah, Jack began, his voice firm but with an undertone that almost sounded like a warning. William isn't just an old man with forgotten dreams. He carries a weight you can't imagine. When I told him about his past, I was trying to protect him. Protect from what? I asked, feeling frustration rising within me. What did you tell him? What does it have to do with what we're building together? Jack took a step forward, and I could see the seriousness in his eyes. I am an old friend of William's. I was the one who helped him leave a love behind, a love that could have changed his life. He was about to take a chance on a path that could have been disastrous. But that was decades ago, I argued, almost begging. William is living a new phase, and I'm part of it. He's starting to dream again. Dreaming is one thing, Sarah. Living in illusion is another, Jack replied, his voice sounding like a distant echo of a bitter truth. You don't know what it means for him to feel again. The fear of losing again, of getting hurt. You might be taking him to a place where he can't get back. I didn't know how to respond. The revelation hit me like a cold wave. And you think he should just stay here, throwing shade on our dreams? You can't decide for him. I'm not deciding for him, Jack replied, his voice now barely above a whisper. I'm trying to open his eyes to reality. The past is not something you forget easily. He may seem strong, but inside him there is a deep, unshakable fear. At that moment, William appeared at the door, his expression confused when he saw us there, talking in a raised tone. What's going on here? He asked, his gaze switching between us. William, I started, but Jack interrupted me. William, we need to talk, said Jack, with a seriousness that left no room for denial. About what I told you. About what you really want. William's gaze fixed on Jack, and I could see the internal struggle he was having. I thought I'd put that behind me, he muttered, almost to himself. You didn't, Jack insisted, taking a step toward him. Your history can't just be erased. You need to confront it before you decide to take risks again. I felt my heart accelerate. William, I called, trying to pull him back into our reality. We were building something beautiful. You were starting to dream again. He looked at me, and I saw the fragility in his eyes. Sarah, I don't know what to think anymore. Jack brought up things I would rather forget. But you can't let fear control your life, I said, the urgency in my voice growing. You can't let a lost love define who you are now. William hesitated, his eyes straying to a distant place, as if he was revisiting memories he didn't want to remember. What if I get hurt again? He asked, the vulnerability in his voice breaking my heart a little more. Sometimes you have to take risks to live fully, I replied, feeling tears pool in my eyes. The past can teach us, but it should not dictate our future. Jack, now silent, seemed to understand the depth of the moment. The weight of the decision was on William, and I knew the words needed to be his. He took a deep breath, and I could feel his internal struggle. "So what do I do now?" he finally asked, his voice a whisper filled with uncertainty. "You decide," Jack replied, his voice softer now. "You can choose to dream again, or you can remain stuck in what you once were. But know that I will always be here, regardless of what you choose." The silence that followed was palpable. The sunlight finally set, and darkness began to envelop the room, but inside me, a small flame of hope still burned. William's future and mine depended on the choice he made now.